This is a little introduction to a project I've called KioskMaker. A kiosk here is a computer that, when you start it, boots automatically into a Chrome web browser pointing at a hard-coded URL, with no other interface from the operating system or even from Chrome itself, and with the hard disk being read-only, so any changes made are lost on the next restart. The idea is that the users of the kiosk can only interact with the website that you pre-configure and can't break anything. So here in VirtualBox, I've got a pre-configured kiosk that I'll start up to show you what the end result looks like. So there you go, it's booted straight into Chrome. The kiosk has got the project documentation baked into it for something to look at. In your case, this would be your own website. And there's not a lot the user can do in here. Even if you Control W to kill Chrome, it just restarts again. I built this kiosk system for a consulting job for people in power substations. So in a substation, the operators need to know the state of everything, and it's all controlled by computers on a local network. And there's a management interface called an HMI, which shows the state of everything, running on a central computer, and then these kiosks scattered about the place. Their sole job is to run a web browser pointing at the management URL. My job was then to build the operating system that could be deployed on a number of kiosks scattered about the place. So a secondary requirement for this job was, because there are multiple kiosks scattered about the place, and because substation people are not keen on DHCP, everything has a static IP address, the multiple kiosks would each need their own IP address, and it would be rather a painful business to have to create, say, 5 kiosk images purely because each one is customized with its own IP address. So instead of that, I've constructed this kiosk mode, and in the grub menu, when you start your kiosk, a kiosk deployer would go to configuration mode. They are prompted for a username and password, which I'll show you where that's set later, and that is baked into the kiosk disk image. And in configuration mode, in the background, the computer is going from read-only to read-write, and the session is now a standard GNOME interface rather than that locked-down browser-only interface. So as I said, the primary purpose of configuration mode is to configure the network settings, which a kiosk deployer would do under here in the settings. Your kiosk deployer can also change the URL that the kiosk will ultimately be displaying. There you can see, as I said, it's got the project docs for something to look at. And this Chrome window shows you what that URL.txt points to. A kiosk deployer could also, if they wanted to, change this background image, which shows up briefly before Chrome overwrites it. And they could change the timeout before the screen goes blank. So your kiosk deployer, after changing those things, would restart the kiosk. And back in the grub menu, they'd go to the read-only kiosk option. And now the kiosk would reboot with that new IP address and those new settings in effect, with the hard disk back to being read-only. Those errors, I think, are VirtualBox specific. So there you go, we're back in read-only mode. So that's the project, that's the goal of it. I can give you a very brief overview of how it works here. It's a pretty low-level project. It's a bunch of shell scripts that you would run sequentially. The first script here constructs this virtual machine and loads it with Alma Linux. If you view it, there's not much to configure here. You could change the base ISO that the system is built on. You can change the VM name in VirtualBox. If you see, the script is mostly these vbox manage commands to construct the virtual machine. But here at the bottom, it's also constructing an attached disk called OEM drive. And OEM drive contains this ks.config file. KS stands for Kickstart, which is the Red Hat system for automating the installation of an operating system. So rather than clicking through the installer, you can just configure this file, put it in an OEM drive disk, and away the installer goes, automatically doing everything. So when you build your own kiosk, you will first want to edit ks.config and change these lines suggested here. There's the the keyboard layout, the language, and at the bottom there's the time zone. So once you've edited ks.config, you would run the first script, which builds this VM. And you see there's a wipe option if you want to start from scratch. The second script, responsible for turning Alma Linux into a kiosk, the only thing you'd want to customize is that grub password, which is necessary when changing from read-only mode to configuration mode. So you'd want to change this to something unique to your deployment. The rest of the script, you could change the background image set here, but mainly what it's doing is syncing across a whole bunch of files into the virtual machine from this copy to kiosk directory outside into /opt/kiosk inside the kiosk. And there's a command called ssh kiosk, which you can run to go into the VM to see what's going on. And in opt kiosk, there's a script called kioskify, which does the work inside the VM of customizing it. And it's safe to run kioskify multiple times as you refine your configuration. It's not going to work now because the kiosk is currently in read-only mode. I can give you a little tour of how it actually works. So if you recall, when it boots up in Grub, there were two options. There was the, let's just go to boot loader entries. This is where the two Grub options came from. There was the configuration mode and the locked down mode. And if I toggle between them, you can see the difference here, or one of the differences, is this kiosk mode parameter, kernel parameter, that's RO or RW. So early on when the kiosk starts, this kiosk updater updater program is running in the background, and it runs kiosk updater, the script here. And this script's job is to look for that kernel parameter, and based on its value, if it's RW, it turns the whole system writable, and if it's RO, it turns the system read-only. And there are sort of subscripts. There's kiosk writable, which handles the job of turning the disk read-only or read-write, and kiosk session, which changes the session from GNOME to that Chrome-only interface. So that's about it. So once you've run those two scripts, and you're happy with your VM for your kiosk, you would run this third script, which just dumps a raw disk image, and this fourth script, which shows you how you might write the raw disk image to a physical SSD or something for your actual kiosk operating system or kiosk computers. That's about it. So please let me know if you have any comments. Thank you.